Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Today is the 15th of March, 2024. And today we have a very important program, the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very intense and exclusive interview with the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation, Dr. Cho Ayaba, and the president of the Ambazonian Governing Council. We have a couple of topics, very sensitive topics that we'll be covering today. And I implore you to pay or give us all your attention tonight, because tonight we're going to answer all your questions. The questions that have been wagging on the social media, the ones that you have in your mind that you've refused to even ask them. Today we are going to give you the opportunity to ask them, and we are going to ask him most of these questions so that he can bring true clarity to Ambazonian people and to the international community. For those that are asking a lot of questions, who are still looking for some answers to things that they feel that they are not satisfied with the answers they are receiving on the social media, the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation is here today with me in the studio, and he will be giving you clarity on most of this topic. So we'll be covering sensitive topics like the death of our own very big number, General Efang. We'll be talking about the 1 month lockdown. We'll be talking about a continuous economic sabotage within La Republique. We'll be talking about the state of the Ambazonian War of Liberation, and we'll talk most especially about the liberation tax. What is the future of the liberation tax? What is it for Ambazonia? And also, we will also be talking especially about the need to prevent reoccupation of Ambazonia by La Republique de Cameroon. So, ladies and gentlemen, and during the last 30 minutes of the interview, the one-on-one interview with the leader, will open the phone lines for you to call in and contribute and ask your questions, because I have a ton of questions that have been sent to me in different platforms. But I might not be able to ask them all, so feel free to ask your questions when the lines are open for you to call in and ask questions. There is no need for you to stay back and grumble. The leader will be here with me. It's your opportunity to clear your doubt. It's your opportunity to get clarity. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the interview. It's a one-on-one exclusive with no other person but the leader of the Ambazonian War of Liberation, Dr. Cho Ayaba. Mr. President, your place there, sir.
Welcome. Your place over there. Oh, my place there.
Thank you very much, sir. You look very relaxed and sharp.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Mr. President, I will not ask you to introduce yourself, because you are there is nobody in Ambazonia, whether still in the womb or not, that does not know about Dr. Cho Ayaba. So I'm just going to go straight into the interview. But before we go, I would just like to use this opportunity to appreciate everybody, Ambazonians on the ground, our fighters who are fighting on a daily basis to defend the territorial integrity of Ambazonia. I want to also thank our prisoners of war who have not given up, who are still languishing in the dungeons of La Republique de Cameroon. Your leader is here, and if you have the opportunity to call, please call and ask your questions to our mothers in the communities who are fighting, who are providing food to our soldiers to keep the communities going. We say we are saluting you from the studio here this evening, and also our IDPs, our refugees. We have not forgotten about you. The leader is here, and we'll be covering everything that has to do with the independence of Ambazonia, the state of the revolution. So, Mr. President, once again, sir, thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule to be with us in the studio. We know, and please feel free when duty calls. I know that the commanders can call you at any time, even now that you're alive. So when they call you, please, sir, feel free to respond to their call. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Before I go into the interview itself, do you want to have a word of greeting just to greet the people before we go up? We move forward, sir.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Madam Press Secretary. Thanks a lot. You people had a wonderful discussion on Women's Day. Congratulations to you for leading the ladies and for
Thank
speaking
you,
on
sir.
behalf of our people and our forces. I extend I extend a lot of greetings to our forces. No, yeah. Uh, I extend a lot of greetings to our forces, our commanders, our prisoners of war, and our people. And I want to thank them for their resilience, the sacrifices that they continue to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And so, Mr. President, I will go straight to the question of the day. And we have a couple of topics that we'll be covering, like I mentioned earlier, the death of General Efang. We'll be talking also about the lockdown. We'll talk about the liberation tax. We'll talk about many other things. But I want to start with the most pressing one, the one that is most people are asking questions about it, and that will be the death of General Efang. I know you've said so many things about it before now, but I would like to know, General Efang, while serving as the assistant of General Ivo, was always a target of the people of Mogamo. After becoming the Supreme General of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, he faced not just internal enemies, but became a primary target to La République du Cameroon, to the knowledge of your leadership and the leadership of the War Council. So this also meant that protection was supposed to be quadrupled following early signs and the untimely death of his predecessor, one of Ambazonian's finest, General Ivo. Would you, as the commander-in-chief, the War Council and the entire ADF family, say you failed in your duty to protect the one man whom the fighting forces on the ground draw inspiration from? How is it possible that you have lost two of your top generals on the ground in almost the same manner? Please be elaborate as much as possible.
Thanks for that question. It has been very difficult for me to talk about the Supreme General. He was, though a big man, almost they are all like my own children. And he was fun, a fun guy. And this will be the first time I speak about him publicly. It's some people look at these men like soldiers. They're their sons, their brothers, their dads, and they've become friends and family. So it's been very hard, extremely very hard to have lost him. And I take full responsibility for all the men and women under my command who have fallen. I take full responsibility. I have no excuses, just my apologies and to their families and to the Ambazonian people who loved him. And I pledge to do better to secure the men in arms. It's a difficult environment, especially when you factor in the hate from inside. All of them have died from inside. La République hasn't got the power, the force to kill these men. Most of them have been betrayed, exposed, emotionally battered, and made vulnerable for the enemy to strike on them. We have worked very hard to secure them. But sometimes there is a limit of man. And when you reach that limit, there is very little you can do. I don't want to talk about a lot. There are still fighting men on the ground. On a daily basis, I get up 2 a.m. to monitor all phones to make sure that they are okay. Every morning, I try to communicate with all of the top generals just to also provide them emotional support and to let them know they are not alone, to make them laugh, to know they are a family. And I will continue to do so until we are free and to honor the memories of those who never made it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. We understand that you've often taken full responsibility to for every single soldier that has fallen, not just General Efang. But still, Ambazonians are a little bit worried. Are we saying that if we, what is the future of the generals of the Ambazonian Defense Forces? Do we see them going down the same path like General Ivor and General Efang did in terms of protection?
If you contextualize the war and if you measure the power of the enemy and the power of our forces, it is a miracle to still have those men around. And for General Efang to have prevailed for the length of time, being able to project Ambazonian nationalism every 1st of October, move from Momo to Fako, to Meme, to Bui, to Menchum, to Mezam, has been because of the sheer tenacity and bravery of these guys. I can't predict the future, but what I can tell you is that the Ambazonian Defense Forces and all the other commanders will prevail over the enemy. For 7 years, they have murdered some of the finest generals that we have had, some of the top commanders that we've had. We've watched today in Bamenda, the biggest city in Ambazonia, the most highly populated city. Our forces this week have undertaken 3 daring operations. In the latest operation, they blocked an entire street and undertook their operation and move out safely. We have just watched a video of our forces in Bui who have struck enemy targets. The enemies are in armor cars. Our soldiers barely have bulletproof vests. Yet for 7 years, the data is clear on who has prevailed. I can only say 2 things. I will continue to work extremely very hard, primarily to secure these commanders and to make sure that they are protected. And the second, and that is providing the necessary armament, the necessary support to the forces in terms of psychological support, moral support, emotional support to ensure that they can survive the circumstances and continue to rally Ambazonians to overcome the manipulation and intoxication that provides the areas of vulnerability that the external enemy exploits.
Thank you very much for that elaborate response, Mr. President. And still on the case still on the topic of General Efang, forgive me, and I will plead that you shouldn't get too emotional because I know when you're talking about your fallen soldiers, you're always too emotional about it. But Ambazonians are really, a lot of Ambazonians expressed a lot of anger and frustration when they saw General Efang being carried out by Cameroon military from the Bingo hospital to an unknown destination. Many tongues were really wagging as to why a targeted general like General Efang will be taken to an open hospital like the General Hospital for treatment instead of a secured clinic in the barrack or where a doctor could be, could have been sent to give him treatment. So people are also anxious to know if after 7 years, the leadership of the Ambazonian Governing Council or the War Council is unable to own its own operation hospital or medical center where wounded soldiers can be treated. So this is the worries that Ambazonians have, and we'll be happy for you to, elaborate more on this as to why a target like General Efang was taken to an open hospital, very vulnerable to La Republique military.
In the past 2 years, I have publicly explained to Ambazonians the necessity for static control. And I have explained to them that one of the reasons for static control is for us to be able to establish medical centers secure enough for top commanders to be treated in. Generally in war, hospitals are places where forces don't get in. If the hospitals are private or public, sometimes international organizations establish neutral areas of treatment. That's what the Medecins Sans Frontier did. But we know that the enemy is an enemy that does not operate under the cover of any law, be it domestic or international. We have worked extremely very hard in different states to establish hospitals, but they are not as secure as they should be. Even if they are secure, you are aware of the infrastructural dilapidation and collapse of our country, that even Amazonians in peacetime or civilians who have or who need kind of emergency treatment sometimes have to be moved either into Biafra or into Cameroon, let alone forces in times of war. General Efang was wounded in a battle, and we did everything possible to make sure we stabilized him. And it needed specialist treatment. We did everything within a secure area to provide that kind of treatment. Then it needed evacuation, which was also a daunting challenge to evacuate a general of his caliber. But the men and women under my command have shown their bravery time and again, and they did the evacuation. I provided firm instructions about security, which involve ensuring that once specialist attention is provided, he should be moved to a secure place, and that was followed. I can't explain all the details because we still have men in arms, but we did our utmost best to the limit of our capability. I cannot tell you that with our limitations, we can have a place that is secure enough to treat our forces. We will continue to limp on this until we are able to provide enough security in certain areas to establish medical facilities that can deal with emergency situation both for our civilian population and our forces. But I want to assure our people that the part of the movie you watch was just 5 minutes. The real movie about he being wounded and being killed is one that if you watch in full, you'll be proud of the leadership.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. Just a follow-up question on that. You've talked about, we want to know, Ambazonians would love to know what they can do better to ensure that our soldiers are well protected, especially our wounded soldiers, so that they shouldn't be taken to public hospitals. We need to have our own hospitals. What should Ambazonians do to make sure that our fighters are protected on the ground in terms of those wounded, and even civilians who need treatment can go to same medical centers?
We don't develop policies as ad hoc instruments of change. We look into the future. We study other conflicts. We study the enemy's patterns. I have explained to Ambazonians what they need to do. We need to turn dynamic control into static control in at least 2 states. I have provided the instrument through which that can be done, which is the liberation tax. We may still lose other generals before we get there, if we don't get there fast enough. It is incumbent on our people to take personal responsibility for the men and women whom they had commissioned to fight and defend the territorial integrity of our country. If you put me in leadership, you must provide me with the tools with which to lead. Amazonians cannot every day hope for independence, scream for it. We must commit to it in treasure and in our blood. And I have said repeatedly, the permanent solution to these mishaps that has cost the lives of our finest men and women is to establish a clear-cut static area of control within which training can take place, education can flourish, public services can be established to make sure that not only our soldiers but our civilian population are not moved to the enemy state.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I hope Ambazonians are listening to you this evening, because we are truly clearing the air on a lot of questions that is lingering in the minds of people. And so moving forward, Mr. President, the Ambazonian Defense Forces they often talk about a liberated zone, the area where General Efang was commanding was considered a liberated zone. Considering that we've seen how he's organized wonderful parades of our Independence Day in that area. The enemy was able to penetrate that area without notice. And so would it be wrong if people start asking whether this area is no longer considered a liberated territory, and would the denizen of this area be a target of La République du Cameroon anytime from now?
This question is very important, and I want to answer it in the broadest term possible. And I will factor in certain statements that have been made by Ambazonians, including leaders of the Ambazonian Governing Council. They have often argued that our forces should be the ones to protect our civilian population. And I would appreciate if Ambazonians do really pay attention. I live here in Norway. Sometimes I don't see the police for 1 month. I am not protected here by the police. I am not protected here by any physical force. In the United States of America, between the 1st of January and today, more than 70,000 Americans have been killed through gun violence. America has one of the highest amount of security forces in terms of the military, National Guards, police, FBI, and you name the rest. The police does not have the capability of protecting anyone, even in independent states with airspace, land border, which are secured. They don't have that possibility. We as civilians are protected by codes, norms, values, laws that make individuals understand that thou shalt not kill, that there are certain actions that infringe on the law and can take you to jail. So when we talk about liberated territory, we mean business. 80% of Ambazonia is liberated. It is not under the governance of La République du Cameroon. It may not be under the governance of Ambazonia, but it is liberated. The institutions of governance have collapsed. The errands that have been recruited to give a semblance of political legitimacy have all escaped. Our civilian populations are going about their activities. Our forces are able to regulate those activities to a certain extent. Our forces are able to conduct anti-11th of February activities, shutting down highways, implementing no number plate laws, ensuring that contrabands like brasseries are eliminated from our society, ensuring that laws like liberation tax laws are respected by our population. What else will you define as liberation? Liberation exists where the laws that formerly govern those places no longer exist. That is what we mean by liberation. What we are now talking about static control is to ensure that penetration by the enemies is nearly impossible because it cannot be completely stopped, and that our civilian population who are subject to constant battery by external actors also are able to be strong enough to reject those propaganda that provides the areas of vulnerability that the enemy can penetrate. So the notion that at this level of our liberation, with the resources that we have, with the intensity of the war, that we can secure every inch of our land, prevent the enemy from penetrating behind our lines, is simply a fantasy or a movie.
Okay, thank you very much for that thoughtful answer. I'm sure that question came to me multiple times. I'll tell you, once people saw the flyer about me having this one-on-one with you, many people started sending in questions, and I'm happy that you were able to give a detailed answer to that question.
Let me just permit me, Madam Press Secretary, to add something.
Please go ahead, sir.
Sometimes there are people who ask these very genuine questions about why we couldn't secure our general. Those are genuine questions, and we have a responsibility to answer. There are others who make a mockery of our advances because they spend the rest of their life trying to undermine the progress we have made, including the the death of the general, where they placed his body at the square of Guzang. They made a mockery while we could not retrieve the body. What I can tell you here is that we have the ability, and we've demonstrated it 90% of the time, to retrieve the bodies of our fallen soldiers. Our forces leave no one behind. When Omaga was killed in Alabokam, he was killed about 2 kilometers away from the barrack. We got his body. We have different methods of retrieving the bodies of our fallen heroes. Deliberately, we made it very clear that the action of the enemy concerning the Fang will be used against the enemy, and that we will force the enemy at each stage to make sure they act in accordance with international law. And we were not only doing it from the domestic level, we will engage internationally. All what you were watching was due to multiple centers of pressure that were being put on Cameroon. We demonstrated power. We made them to secure the body at the mortuary. We watch them every day. I have the pictures of General Efang everywhere he was taken. We observe as they played propaganda. We call their bluff. They attempted to move the body. I have the video when they rallied at Guzang the first day to try to bring his body. We went in there. They escaped. And then they then moved again several armor cars and brought the body, and then they escaped. We made it clear to the family, to the forces, the body stays there until they walk back to the same spot, recover his body, and bury him. And they did. And at the appropriate time, we will recover his body and give him the honor he deserves.
Perfect. That's wonderful. That's, you literally took out the next question I had for you about the body of General Efang that was dropped at the Guzang market. But still on that, I would still like to ask Mr. President. A lot of people are saying that you use your generals and dump them when they are not needed by you. And a perfect example is the demise of General Efang and how he was easily taken away from your control, and he was dumped at the market, and you abandoned him there and had no not even his family members were able to attend to him because they were afraid of you, because you had abandoned the body of your general. What, I mean, in your own war language or war terms, how can you explain that action to the people so that they can understand the reason why you didn't move forward to recover the body of General Efang at that time? But most especially because they said the family said you used their brother and then dumped them.
I don't think that's what the family has said. I don't think so. It is not in the state in which he laid there in Guzang that we shall determine what we did. The time that anybody could hold claim that he was abandoned was when he was under attack. It took us close to 9 hours to be able to retrieve General Efang after he had been wounded. I shared the conversation I was having with him to the Ambazonian people. We did not spend less than 6.5 million between when he was wounded until when he was whisked out of the hospital. That is how you measure care. No soldier of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, even soldiers who are not under my command, do I abandon them. No soldier of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, not even those who are under my command, who are not under my command, are instruments of some political posturing. No. They are humans, they are children, they are family, they are people I have come to know their children, know their spouses, know their families. And even after his death, the father has still sent thank you to us for what we did, for how we took his son from relative obscurity in Kumba and made him the finest, bravest, most known Ambazonian warrior. His dad is proud, the siblings are proud of the services of their son, and they know what we did. It is not in what they saw. They have seen the arms that our effort have been able to procure. They have seen the demonstration of nationalism that Momo has shown thanks to what we have done. I did not only groom him, I wrote speeches for him. I taught him how to read those speeches. I explained every word. I turned him from an ordinary man from Meme who dealt in cocoa to a strong gentleman who believed in himself and has transferred that belief and ideology to thousands of other Amazonian forces. I made sure that other forces were grown. A leader is not measured by all what he or she does. It is also measured by the number of leaders they create. And it is testament of what we are seeing today in Momo and Ambazonia.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm particularly delighted with that answer, and I feel very happy with that. And I hope Ambazonians, this can really put people's minds at rest. And just moving forward on this, Mr. President, it has now been made clear that the late John Frunze and Mbanda financed the Momo cartel, the Sako-led infiltrated IG, to the tune of about 100 million colonial currency to
Yes, I wanted you
destroy
to
the Ambazonian Defense Forces, the very
Correct.
seat of the ADF in Mogamo. So even after killing two of their own sons, top generals of the ADF is still waxing strong in that particular area. What is your confidence at maintaining the ADF headquarters in Mogamo, despite all the attacks? And what do you think is the reason for the cartel's failure at destroying the ADF, despite collecting huge sums of money to destroy the ADF in Mogamo?
Momo, Momo has been a victim of the experiment of occupation by Cameroon. Momo has been, Momo Manu have been the two states that have been the greatest in terms of victimization. I explained in my audio addressing the people of Momo yesterday the pattern of the occupier. So it used our citizens from Momo as guinea pigs in its experiment of occupation. It transformed a lot of them into elites and middlemen and women who they could use to govern Momo. Momo is also unique because of the mass migration from Momo into other areas. It is also unique because they maintain a very strong bond. So if you go into quarters a year, meta quarters here and there, it is not like maybe Mancon people or people from other places when they move, though they maintain that bond, but they are a bit dispersed. They are a people that are they bond together. And these elites have used as have instrumentalized Momo in a particular way to give them some level of entitlement. So what has happened in Momo is that the presence of the ADF in Momo was seen as foreign because they consider the commander-in-chief of the ADF as from not from Momo. Even though the top generals of the ADF have come from Momo, that has not still been enough. They have this phobia that the power that Dr. Cho Ayaba has in this liberation phase may translate into political power after independence. And so the cartels that have worked for the regime, the elites, the chiefs who have benefited from the system, have been used by the regime, who have in turn used other Ambazonian political formations to whip this anti-ADF sentiment, as you heard in the audio of Mr. John Fundi and Bandam being able to provide funds for the ADF to be eliminated. ADF is an idea that is very difficult to unlearn. It is very difficult to penetrate and undermine or water down. And the cartels have realized that if you eliminate the ADF, you allow other forces that are subjected to political instrumentalization. And I explained this yesterday. It's not only in Momo, within the Mankon area, towards the site of the Fons Palace, you also have the Mankon elites through the militancy of late Angwafo with the CPDM. They promoted a couple of these elites, and it was very easy for these elites to infiltrate the forces around this area, first as supporters, then as spies, and then finally as traitors. They betrayed and dismantled these forces. We've also seen it in Lebialem, where these elites have infiltrated. The difficulty in infiltrating the ADF is because of the command and control. There is a very, and you are aware of the command and control that the Ambazonian Governing Council has established, not only in the forces, but even in the president. So I cannot just simply just go out there and do what I want. Your office will call me out. Other offices will call me out. Things are discussed, debated, refined, and to make sure that everyone takes the glory, everyone takes the blame. The president is simply the instrument of policies that have been agreed to by the members. So too is the ADF. General Efan could not just go out and announce policies. If he has an idea like the liberation tax he brought, he came to my office, I circulated it, it was discussed and adopted, and a word mark to him for implementation. So it has been very difficult for the enemy to break this command and control. And so what they have used now are the tribal links, social media, to make sure they batter the forces, they infiltrate, like they did with General Efang. So Momo will remain the headquarters of the Amazonian Defense Forces. I'm very confident in the forces in Momo. They are very powerful. You have seen in the past 2 weeks, they've locked down the Trans-African Highway. They have been able to hold down the enemy. We have videos watching the enemy running the street with armor cars at very high speed because they are scared. And we will rebuild the forces in a way that Amazonians will be proud of. The tenacity of the guys is unrivaled, and I'm very confident.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think you're losing your voice. It would be great if you take a sip of water there. We still have a long way to go. So thank you, Mr. President, for that elaborate answer. And I'm happy and I hope Ambazonians are listening to you this evening, and they will listen after this show. So, Mr. President, the leadership of the Ambazonian Governing Council and that of the ADF are known for their well-structured procedure when it comes to replacing or substituting their generals or commanders once they fall on the ground. But both the international community and Ambazonians at large have been eagerly watching and waiting for your leadership to name the new general of the Ambazonian Defense Forces. But up to date, the War Council chief has not been able to come out and name a new general for the Ambazonian Defense Forces. But does this mean the ADF is short of competent soldiers who can take up the rank of a general, or is this a new strategy by the War Council? Ambazonians would like to know.
General Efan remains the Supreme General of the Ambazonian Defense Forces.
Okay, that is it?
That is it.
Great. Ambazonians, you've heard the man himself. General Efan remains the Supreme General of the Ambazonian Defense Forces. Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. President. So, as the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation, people expect you to unite the forces to fight together against La République du Cameroon. What has been the relationship between the ADF, the Ambazonian Defense Forces, and other forces on the ground? What have you done over the years to achieve any form of collaboration or unity among the forces?
A lot. A lot in the past, a lot in the present, and a lot ongoing. We are doing a lot. After all failed attempts at uniting at the political level, our focus is now geared towards uniting the forces on the ground to achieve liberation at the military level, and then move us into transition and hope we are going to find some areas of commonality. So we have been working extremely very hard from the beginning. At Dadi, where we train most of our forces, we united them. They were divided by wannabe presidents who thought, self-defense was irrelevant, and then later thought it was relevant and became incapable of building an organic force. They divided these men through fake promises, instrumentalization. They've made our job very difficult. But we have been working extremely very hard thanks to some very important actors who have been advising me, who are not even members of the AGOVC, who have also been helping my leadership support these forces in a small way. You must have realized there are forces that have adopted the liberation tax. We want to achieve unity in a subtle manner, not from that kind of top down approach or from that kind of hurried approach. We want to use simple tools to make sure that these forces find common areas of interest, like in the liberation tax. Forces in Bui have adopted it. We have forces in Mezam have adopted it. Other forces in other areas have adopted it, calling it different names. But we know the liberation tax as a tool to regulate the relationship between our forces and our civilians will work irrespective of the name. We have been ensuring that there are common actions that are undertaken by these forces concerning the 11th of February. The funds we provided in Mezam, we made sure it went for all of the forces in Mezam, irrespective of whether they are AD or not. During the Christmas period, I provided funds to nearly all of the forces in Mezam. I provided funds into Ngoki Tunja's year 20,000, year 50,000, just to buy a bag of rice. So we've been trying to build a very good working relationship with the forces on the ground. We have a long way to go. I cannot tell you here that it's going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be very difficult to unlearn the intoxication and manipulation and to overcome the barrier of the war economy. Is going to be a daunting challenge. But I'm working on different models that can secure for different forces the interest that makes them to operate in particular locations and make sure that in working together, those interests are not undermined just for the sake of them coordinating, sharing intelligence, fighting together, and gradually building the kind of relationship that will translate these individual forces into the Amazonian army as we move forward. It will take money, it will take patience, and for both elements, I think I asked the Amazonian people to help us to achieve these outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. Ambazonians, I hope you're listening. Mr. President, there is always the notion and this concept amongst Ambazonians, especially those that are against the Ambazonian Defense Forces and, of course, against you as a leader of the Ambazonian War of Liberation, that whenever you talk about working with forces, you have the mentality of trying to use those forces or to bring them under the ADF and not work with them as independent forces. What message do you have for forces who have been so brainwashed on the ground, thinking that once you step in or you start communicating with them, talking about unity, it's about bringing them under the ADF? What about the identity? Ambazonians would like to know that part of it.
That assertion flies, in the face of reality. Because if you realize when we established the contender force, we brought together the Amazonian Defense Forces, the SOCADEF, and I think the DOD, the Department of Defense Forces. I think that might have been under the Ayuktabe, SACO, IG. Everywhere we have operated in Bui, it is the identity of the ADF that is threatened. The identity of other forces has never been threatened. You can never transform the 7 Kata into ADF. because 7 Kata is born out of in a particular name. It's an identity. And the forces know that the ADF is also a force like the 7 Kata. It's also a force like the Black Mamba. It's also a force like the ARF. It's also a force like other forces. So you cannot have a situation where every other force becomes ADF. I don't know of any model in political association or in military association that it works that way, except in violent takeovers like we found in Sri Lanka. And that didn't work out either with the Tamil Tigers. So we believe in the kind of model that was established in Eritrea. We believe in the model that we are watching today in Myanmar, where different independent forces come together, maintain their identity, establish a command and control at different levels, work together, and once we achieve our goal, those forces will be turned into the Ambazonian army under the Ambazonian government. And the names of those forces could become names of barracks, names of airport. What about the Bafut Airport becoming the 7 Qatar International Airport? What about the military headquarters of the of Amazonia becomes the mountain lions? So these manipulators out there have tried every means, even at the political level, when they say, "Oh, when I talk of unity, it's just because I want to lead." When you fear competence, when you fear models that are strong and are better, and you lose out. If Estonia would be afraid of the United States, it will never be a partner with the United States in NATO. The GDP of Estonia is minimal in comparison to the GDP of the United States. So Ambazonians must not be afraid of political alliances. They must look at different models that have existed and realize that we can build models too that can take us forward. But I am now more focused in making sure that these forces have a voice in me, that I can speak for them. I can take responsibility for them. I can go to jail for all of them. There are things that happen on the ground that I get up in the morning and I just hear. I still make sure I understand it. And I explain it in a way that the world can understand, in a way that the Amazonian people can understand. Because they are like men and women in a tunnel. They can only see as far as the light can go. We are out of that tunnel. We see further. We are able to understand geopolitics, international relations, and capture the Amazonian happenings and explain it back to them and our people in a way that they see the end very near. And I think I have done my utmost best, and I will continue to do my best, especially at this moment where we are mobilizing funds using the liberation tax.
Okay, thank you very much. But a follow-up question on that, the Amazonian Defense Forces has often been looked at as the People's Army and as the national army of Ambazonia. So if you are saying that these other forces will not be able to align under the Amazonian Defense Forces, doesn't that contradict the whole notion of it being the People's Army and the national army?
No, it doesn't. You cannot take a fact of semantics and turn it into an institutional reality. The Amazonian Defense Forces is the pioneer force. It is designed to operate in strategic states that are relevant for our liberation. It is the force that has elevated Amazonian nationalism. And so supporters of the ADF, of the AGOFC, have always seen it that way. That does not negate the importance of other forces in the liberation effort. And I say it clearly, and hope this goes to members of the AGOFC. The ADF will not replace or take over other forces and take away their identity. It will not happen. I am working on a model that, one, ensures that these forces can work together where possible. Where it is not possible, the ADF will work alone, also respecting these other forces. The ADF has the possibility alone to also liberate. It may take longer, but the shortest way to our independence is for me as a leader of our people to be able to harness the potential of these other forces and to make sure we can speed up our day of freedom. And that's a responsibility I take very seriously.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. President. It was very important for you to make that point very clear again for people to understand, because there's been a lot of talk about this, and I'm happy that you're clarifying this without mincing your words. And again, still on General Efang, unfortunately, we will have to talk more about him because he's our Supreme General. Mr. President, I'm just wondering, has the demise of General Efang weakened the resolve of our fighting forces on the ground, or has his falling created any vacuum in the command and control of especially the Ambazonian Defense Forces on the ground, since he was their Supreme General?
After the operation this morning, the commander in charge of that operation left a message to the ADF Leadership Command. And he said, I wish I could retrieve it and play it for our people to listen, but that may take a long period of time. He said, these people now understand that papa that they killed had crazy kids, and these kids will go wild. General Efang is irreplaceable. It's irreplaceable. It was a towering figure, a father that brought order. I don't think anybody can play his role. His demise has turned his children into what the commander called crazy children. That's why I said the other day, a new reality has dawned in Momo. They took away the peacemaker. He is the guy that when things went rough, for example, when I asked him, how is it possible that you were with more than 25 men, well armed, and you were moving into Bui, and a commander of a very weak force, a few of them, asked you to drop your gun before you people could talk, and you did. And he said, Pa, what else should I have done? To train my gun on them? Do you know what would have been spoken out here? And one of the intelligence officers said to me, he said, that was a huge mistake to have believed that that other commander who had asked them to drop their gun, that they came in peace, meant what he said. He was a guy who had the opportunity to take over a smaller force, but he will not do it. He believed very strongly in coexistence. He was a guy with enough power to do whatever he wanted to do with his opponents within Momo. He believed that he could stand with children who walked under him and be blessed by the traditional elites within that particular constituency. There is no vacuum. The Ambazonian Defense Forces is designed in a way that once you are alive, you know your successor the day before you fall. Even at the political level, there are 4 successions behind me. If I fall, the next person takes over. If that person, the vice president takes over, the vice president goes down, the chairman of the Council of Mission takes over. He goes down, the chairman of the National Council, sorry. If he falls, the chairman of the Council of Mission. And before that one falls, there will be a new president. So these things are known because they are part of the charter. And I can assure Ambazonians that though we will miss our general, though the kids will miss their father, his death has also turned them from somehow being domestic animals into wild beasts.
Okay. Mr. President, I would like to come with a follow-up question on that part of them being a wild beast. The Ambazonian Defense Forces operate on a strict code of conduct that they've been adhering to that code from its inception till now. So with the demise of General Efang and his children telling themselves they will go crazy, does it mean the code of conduct has become invalid at this time in point?
No. There are natural laws. There are natural laws that regulate the conduct of humans, whether they are written or unwritten. And we adhere to and we'll continue to ask the forces to respect the code of conduct. There are times when we talk about reciprocity that we will hope that the enemy will respect its obligations under international law, and if it fails, we have no obligation to respect that particular law. But our conduct at that particular stage will be determined by the conduct of the enemy.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I deliberately brought that question up because we don't want the international media holding you that you said this and the international community saying you've said your children should go crazy and they will not respect the Ambazonians.
Who cares about them, honestly? The failed
Oh, right.
Ambazonians, who really cares about them? Whatever they want to
Oh,
say is up to them.
oh, great. I like that one. I like that part of you then. Okay. I I was just making sure because we've been so careful about what we say and we've allowed them to to control the narrative. But I'm happy that you've brought that out, and I'm sure most Ambazonians or those even watching us now will be happy to hear you say that. And just almost the last question on this particular topic before we move forward. You've always said repeatedly that sending people into arms race is an enormous responsibility on you. And you even said that now when we started. And so the first goal of you as a leader should always be to avoid unnecessary deaths, bring as many of your troops back from battlefields as possible, save them. And we, of course, know that when soldiers go into the battlefield, it's it's inevitable that some of them will fall, and that has happened in the past years in Ambazonia. But sadly, it has also been that many of our soldiers have fallen who did not actually go into the battlefield, and they were killed by internal enablers. So, as a commander in chief, I want to talk about the Bui 39 top generals of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, General Ivo, Big Number, Agaba, and Ginyam, and Ezek, all of these people who were really killed by our own people. And most of the people think that you are not radical enough. You've not been radical enough to handle these people who have become internal enablers within the Ambazonian struggle. What lessons have you learned in all of this, and how do you intend to, to make sure that this does not happen again, especially after the fall of General Efa?
As a leader, one of my first obligations is to safeguard the integrity of the Ambazonian struggle and to avoid pivoting in a way that destroys the Ambazonian struggle in my possibly vain attempt to prove to be radical. My radicalism is in the way I deal with the principal enemy whose actions in the past 60 years have hurt us. My radicalism is in ensuring that our forces are protected, that they are armed. My radicalism should be measured by the amount of weapons, the way I protect Amazonia. Those who claim to be radical have sold us, who shouted, scream, and stuff. I am leading from exile. I have to be strategic. Anything I do might destroy the Ambazonian struggle because some of the things that we have seen, for example, the killing of our forces, have been pushed by the enemy state so that they bring chaos within the Ambazonian struggle, blame Dr. Cho Ayaba, undermine it, and destroy it. For 7 years, I have managed my relationship with individuals, with groups, in a way that can safeguard our struggle and give our people hope. That is what I have done, and that is what I should do. As far as I'm concerned, I do not want to come across, even in my perceived less radical way, I am still seen as a very dangerous person. I don't think there is any Ambazonian leader who can be compared in terms of their strong stance with mine.
That's a
I don't
fact.
want to, yes, I don't want to take our struggle to the precipice. When I think about what, let me give you a parallel. When the genocide was happening in Rwanda, the primary responsibility that Kagame had was to make sure that he liberated Rwanda and undermine the ability of the enemy to continue to kill. Once he had established, some level of security, he's been going after the perpetrators of genocide across the world. In World War II, the primary responsibility of the Western Alliance was to ensure that Hitler was defeated. Israel, I think in the 60s or the 70s, still went into South America and took home Eichmann. So we have to conduct ourselves in a way that we don't lose focus. That's why I always say we should remain focused. The enemy's strategy is to divert us, is to make sure that we spend our time fighting each other, is to make sure we spend our time shouting over each other. I am hearing everybody screaming. They were screaming for our forces to be killed in Bui. They called the Nigerian police to arrest our forces in Calabar. They are hiding in Western capitals. If I spend my time trying to chase on these ghost actors, we will lose Ambazonia. But there will be a time for accountability. No one who has, in their words, in their actions, walked against Ambazonia will be spared. As I have said, we will not be South Africa. There will be no peace and reconciliation. There will be accountability as a sign of justice and healing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I will not want to stretch more on this on General Efang. I know we can sit here the whole day and we can talk about General Efang because he's done a lot for Ambazonia and he is in the heart of many Ambazonians. But I would like us to move forward from here, and I would like to talk about the 1 month lockdown, of the Trans African Highway. Mr. President, uh, for the purpose of education and clarity to most Ambazonians who are not aware of many of these things and understanding and to the understanding of any ordinary person listening to you, what first of all is the Trans-African Highway and where does it span from through Ambazonia? Just so that before when we are going into the nitty-gritties, people should even have an understanding of what you always, they think that you're too advanced. Sometimes you use what nobody understands what you're saying.
Every Ambazonian, I think they even know it better than myself. The ordinary Ambazonian, they know the Trans-African Highway as a stretch mesam going across Momo into Manyu, right across into Biafra, and spins the other way down through Kope, right down into Meme, and cuts across Fako down into La Republique. So
Right.
this is a network that benefits the enemy a lot. I also know it benefits our people, but it accounts for huge goods that are supplied to the enemy. And so we will engage. The 1 month might be extended to 5 months. I just want people to be prepared. The people should begin preparing for the borders between Ambazonia and Cameroon to be shut down. We are looking at the period. So if you are living in La Republique and you are thinking of moving back, move back, because we'll give you a period of about a month to prepare. We'll shut down the border. There will be no movement between Ambazonia and La Republique. Any movement from the northern to the Atlantic will go through our own roads. We will need extreme measures against the enemy for us to succeed. And I think Ambazonians must know, as I announced in December, we will burn down the economy of the enemy in Ambazonia and rebuild our country back in a way that benefits our people.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarity. And based on what you've said now, I think it's official now that this is a position of the Ambazonian Governing Council that the Trans-African Highway spanning from Bamenda through Mamfe, Enugu, Nigeria will be completely shut down for 1 month. So have you factored in the economic implications of this 1 month lockdown? That stretch of road simply it economically empowers hundreds of Ambazonians, maybe commercial drivers. It eases movement of perishable goods from Ambazonia to Nigeria, and also employ roadside traders. So if your administration wants Ambazonians to pay the liberation tax, how would those who benefit from the economic activities of this road have money to pay their liberation tax? Is this policy not counterproductive, Mr. President?
We have just received a report that La République was able to repay some levels of its loan thanks to the amount of money that it collected on through toll gates. The amount of money that La République soldiers make out of the transatlantic or the Trans-African Highway is massive. It's massive. Ambazonians benefit very little from these transactions. All the movements from Biafra across into Ambazonia, a high percentage of the goods that come in go into one moment. Bye boy. A high percentage of the goods that come through Ambazonia move into La République du Cameroon. Now, in a war of liberation, if you are too sentimental, you will not even start. Because when you stake a claim to dismantle the police of the enemy, you must expect insecurity. If you think of eliminating the political administrators of the enemy, you must begin to ask yourself, are you able to provide immediate alternatives in terms of services for our people? If you call for a boycott of the colonial education of the enemy, are you able to provide immediate reprieve in terms of education for your people? Nobody in the liberation struggle can answer these questions in the affirmative. Yet, all of them have launched an assault on enemy institutions. We cannot provide immediate reprieve or answers to the burning questions that Ambazonia asks about the repercussions of actions. What we measure at the onset, what impact does a particular action have on the enemy? And all of us will agree that Cameroon's economy has collapsed. Cameroon is unable to pay its international debt. There is, apart from inflation generated price hikes, the scarcity in terms of resources has an impact on the ability of Cameroonians themselves to function cohesively. We watch women from Cameroon on Women's Day talking in markets. In a liberation struggle, what do? You capture all of these index or indicators and you see how you can impact them negatively to create the kind of condition for a revolt within Cameroon that will give you the opportunity within Ambazonia to free yourself in the shortest period of time. And so I want to assure our people, liberation struggle will impose some level of pain on you. But this level of pain will never be 60 years in comparison to the impunity with which the enemy has acted in our land. And our people must embrace this pain as positive pain, because for at least they can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just wanted to, before I come to this question, since the onset of this revolution, every decision, every policy, every executive order you've ever put out there, it has been for the benefit of Ambazonia. It has been for Ambazonians, and it has been to undermine the enemy in Ambazonia. But it's unfortunate that a group of people or a group of Ambazonians have never seen it in that light. So the people of Batibo have always had that strong opposition against you as a person, and also against everything that has to do with Ambazonian Governing Council, the ADF, even community schools. And this also is demonstrated by the opposition on this particular 1 month lockdown. And we've heard multiple audio messages flying all over the social media declaring that they will not respect this 1 month lockdown of the Trans African Highway. And also, they kind of have they are also they oppose the Guzang markets being shut down for a specific period of time, and they're just all over the place about it, having this entitlement mentality, thinking that the word is law and it doesn't matter how much La Republic has oppressed our people. So my question to you is, Mr. President, you even spoke to them, but how do you intend to manage this group of people? And what education can you give to them when it comes to this particular lockdown? And most especially, what are the consequences? Because what are the consequences meted on those who will violate this lockdown?
The first thing is that the people of Momo don't hate the ADF. The people of Momo don't hate Dr. Cho Ayaba.
Mr.
We have a
President, you are
hand.
too modest, Beck.
Yeah, we have a handful. You see, if you want to measure, look, we have to be realistic. Do you think Chris Ano speaks for Lebialem? Do you think this Chris Ano, speaks for Lebialem, or the other failed uncle in Finland, who doesn't know his left from from his right? He speaks for the people of Momo. We should not give these people accolades they don't deserve. We have seen in this struggle people who use social media metrics to hold claim to Ambazonia. That time has been, what has brought them down. These people don't speak for Momo, and the only power they have is with their cell phones that have been produced by by other individuals to make a lot of noise. If they had power, they would not be screaming. And I can assure Amazonians that, and as the forces have spoken yesterday and today, their power ends in social media. They can make a lot of noise, go take a cup of coffee, and that's it. They move to the next topic. The highway is blocked. Not even La Republic can approach it. We will slam you. The highway is blocked. And I have said here, we will look at the impact on Cameroon's economy. I will determine how long it goes on. We will open the highway after the 1 month, and we will ensure that those who ply the highway do not pay bribes and a lot of money to the enemy forces, especially along the Bachua axis. So what we have to know is that we cannot eliminate this noise. It's cheap propaganda on social media. We will manage it through education. But as I said, there are consequences. And I will not sit here and talk about the consequences. There are consequences. And at the appropriate time, they will know who is boss.
That's right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want you to clarify something here to Ambazonians. Most Ambazonians see you as the president of the Ambazonian Governing Council, and not they don't understand what it means when we declare that you are the leader of the Ambazonian War of Liberation.
I'm the leader of the Amazon. I am the leader of the Ambazonian people. You see, this, we always, I come from Mancon, take note. And so we are not people who arrogate to ourselves certain non-institutional powers. So sometimes by virtue of functionality, I am the leader of the Ambazonian people. I am the leader of the Ambazonian War of Liberation. Every other agitator can claim whatever they want to claim, but also I'm the president of the Ambazonian Governing Council with a charter mandate to lead the Ambazonian Governing Council within a period of time.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarity, because sometimes these people, they fit the minds of the vulnerable Ambazonians and our mothers back home who don't understand most of these things, that, oh, he only speaks for the egg of sea, he doesn't speak for Ambazonia. We just wanted to make that clear, that as the leader of the Ambazonian War of Liberation, you are the leader of the people. And so what you say stands. And so just to make that point very clear again to those naysayers who are out there just making noise on the social media, trying to get a little bit of relevance for themselves. So they should, everybody back fine. Okay. Moving forward, Mr. President, I would like us to move into our very game changer, the liberation tax. You know, each time when we hear the name Dr. Cho Ayaba, we sit back and we reflect the struggle for the last 7 years and the things that you've done, the things that you've introduced, the strategies, the blueprint that you've introduced in this revolution, and how it has changed our revolution. And it's mind-blowing how you've been able to move from one level to another, introducing beneficial policies to the people of Ambazonia, and how to totally liberate Ambazonia from the hands of La Republic. And one of these, like you did with self-defense, block by block, making sure that Ambazonia
Keep saying them, keep saying them, keep saying them. Oh Lord, oh Lord.
Yeah, so it's amazing that we are here today. We want to talk about the liberation tax. This is something that no other leader could have ever thought of it. And all they do is make noise, but you sit, you strategize, you think of how to liberate Ambazonia. And we have today a game changer, which is the liberation tax. I'm so happy to talk about it, because it gives me, you know, that kind of stuff that makes you say, I'm at the feet somehow. That's how it is. So, yeah.
See, let me tell
Yeah.
you something. Listen. I don't know if you will be able to listen to this.
Okay, thanks, completely. Yes, I wanted you to send us the money that we can use to send our own liberation tax. That's why I was contacting you completely.
Yeah.
As we are online,
Right.
a Barak Mbui is trying to send their liberation tax. This week, I think we are close to 3 million. Between 1st of January and now, we must have raised about 25 million.
That's right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, yes. It's,
Mr. President, go ahead. You are already in the mood to talk about it. I don't want to bring it in a form of question, which I will bring. But before you even talk about it, I just want Ambazonians to know that this is one of the elements of the things you've introduced that really put La Republic into panic, the liberation tax. And their enablers they are doing everything to oppose it. They are doing everything day and night to oppose it, to make sure that it does not come to fruition, which is already a total failure on the part, because the people of Ambazonia have expressed that level of, you know, belonging to that particular project, and they're doing everything to make sure that they are part of the process and they are part of the project in itself. And the strategy of implementing the liberation tax under your leadership has been nothing but enormous. But then, do you see this policy as a success, a short-term success, or a long-term success for Ambazonia?
Every new law, and you are also an international law student, every new law, whether treaty or domestic, it takes time to take effect. It takes time to take effect, because once laws are established, it requires the law to be explained, for people to be educated. But I can assure you that when you quantify the opposition, when you quantify the opposition from domestic weaver birds and the enemy state, and then you look at what we have been able to achieve, I can only say we have done well. Now it's a competition. Today, the chairperson of, was it yesterday or today? The chairperson of your mission in Ireland, he paid his tax for 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
For 5 years. And last year, he paid taxes for 30 persons from his village. I wouldn't call the village here. He paid for 30 persons. We listen to audios and you listen to them. Every day, people are calling from ground zero. How do I pay my tax? The other day, we were having a conversation. Somebody wanted to pay tax for a 6-year-old child. And we were talking about it, and somebody said, is that legal? And I explained the notion of the tax as some kind of a covenant that the 6-year-old is not obligated to pay. But if the parents just want to do it as a symbol of their own commitment, and then it's fine. Ambazonians are happy for the first time in the history of the existence of the Ambazonian Governing Council and the ADF. The ADF now has a budget that if you say you want 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, you can disburse that money. If any other sister force somewhere needs money, we are able to move. We have not even started spending the liberation tax. The other day, Boyo called, though they are still to launch their own tax, they needed money. We move around, 1 million was transferred. Other forces in Menchum, they wanted some food money. It was transferred. The liberation tax has brought relief, and I think you would testify to that. The pain of being unable to provide simple medical support to our forces or to buy them bullets, the pain that we felt as their leaders was very high. It's like a parent sending a child to school, the child is sent out because you lack school fees. It's very painful. So the liberation tax is a covenant between our people and our forces. And I think it has been welcome. And I ask all others who are still, and let me take a bit of just 1 minute on this. One of the strategies of those who have been opposed to my leadership and the Ambazonian Governing Council, one of their principal strategy was to defund us, was to make sure, yes, we didn't have money. One of the greatest obstacles to collaboration, and you recall when we tried collaboration with Ayuk Tabe, and they were throwing audios out there that we needed collaboration because we needed monies from the Ayuk Tabe supporters. They collapsed it because they thought that collaboration will provide us with the necessary funds we need to move ahead.
Give us power.
Yes. When we tried with the SACOs, recall, in Washington, we mobilized, I think, $40,000. We all came together as leaders and we said the money should be shared. They were scared. And they said to themselves, put these 10,000 in Yaba's hand and ADF is in Boya.
No bygones.
Yeah, so when we talked about the liberation tax, it's not because they have not implemented it before. They had a citizens levy, they had a draft, they had a big rubber gun, they had all of these projects with big names, right? Yeah. It is not that they hated it. They are scared. They are scared that if we have money, it is going to put us in a position where their noise will be irrelevant. We are already there. Their only prayer now is that they should kill all our commanders and they are happy. But I can assure each Ambazonian that the funds you pay as taxes are judiciously used for the benefit of Ambazonian forces. I have also said those forces that have adopted the liberation tax will also benefit from the diaspora liberation tax. We've raised a lot of money also in the diaspora, more than 25 to 30 million. That will benefit all the forces on the ground. So people should take pride in policies that work to safeguard our struggle, and they should not have any panic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I love the momentum even in the comment section when we mentioned the liberation tax. It feels like it felt like people just came alive. At just hearing about the liberation tax, people are just excited. That is just how fun it is to talk about a process that you are part of from the beginning. You're part of the planning, and then now it's the implementation. So I'm really
Yes.
happy about that. But still, on the on liberation tax, we've recorded a lot of successes across in specific areas in Ambazonia, and other areas of Ambazonians have been of Ambazonia has been very dormant or cold. They don't even know much about the liberation tax. What could be the reason? Is it that we don't have Atla in that area, or we don't the forces in that area do not believe in the spirit of the liberation tax? What is the problem that all of this we don't have? The liberation tax thing is not has not cut across the
There,
national
there,
territory.
there is no problem. Liberation tax is not raised by virtue of forces having arms. It's raised by the fact that people respect the laws, even though they are. I don't think you like paying taxes over there, do you? You don't. If
Slash the
if
damn
today they
thing
will
from my
announce that,
salary.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I want to pay any tax on my salary either, and so nobody wants to pay any tax. But there are different versions of taxes. And as I said, when you raise the issue, it will take time for this thing to sip, to go down. And it's going down. Across the entire territory, people are paying their taxes. In Fako, in Meme, there are others that are paying extremely very high. But our struggle is not the kind of stuff. There are other states that carry the burden also of the armed resistance more than others. So every state contributes in the way that it can, and it moves from state to state. So I'm very confident with more education, more penetration, and more participation from our diasporan citizens, and to educate our population, you will find that many people will pay. And most importantly, also, yesterday I had announced, and I think you had spoken about it during the first statements we made about liberation tax, that part of the funds will also go to education. Yesterday we disbursed 2 million to the education board, and so we are working. Once our people begin also to see the impact of the tax, or feel the impact of the tax, they will do more commitment. We're hearing of all the attacks that are going on in the territory. It is not even because we're injecting the taxes, because of the sentiment which you've expressed here also. The sentiment is positive. Ambazonians believe that they have found an avenue through which to channel their own commitment for their own freedom. And they are confident in the way that we explain the tax, that it will be used in a way that will benefit them.
Okay. Mr. President, well, there is no good policy that does not come with its own attacks. So our naysayers are out there shouting at the rooftop for who cares to hear that your policy of implementing the liberation tax is not to liberate Ambazonia, but it's a way of you extorting money from your own people to enrich yourself in Norway and be an empire for yourself. That the policy is not to liberate Ambazonia, it's to liberate you and your household and a group of your clique from poverty. And it's mind-blowing and it's baffling, but because that has come up multiple times, I wanted you to address this in terms of the policy being a tool of exploitation of the poor. People are poor, then you continue to exploit them of the little that they have to survive. Could you please elaborate on this and tell the people why they are paying these taxes, and if this has worked before in other places, or this is just a new thing that you're introducing to our own people?
It's not new. It's not new. The Ambazonians pay a lot of tax to Cameroon, their oppressor. The women are harassed in markets to pay communal taxes that are not used for any good purpose. They pay unofficial taxes through bribes to gun wielding police officers, gendarmes, even to have a birth certificate, to pay taxes, to do everything. Amazonians have been impoverished to pay a lot of money. Now we had the enemy announcing taxes on monies that people receive through Momo. We got the other day, just to move from Bamenda to Kumba one way is about 8,000. That's about, for a woman, 2 years of liberation tax. And it doesn't take an Einstein to be able to understand the disparity, that if we institute 5,000 per year, and if you want to extrapolate from that and calculate how much you spend through the nitty-gritties of your life in the system on the enemy for no just returns. So there is no extortion. It's a commitment to an outcome that all of us have agreed to. In terms of the governance of the tax, not even myself sitting here, and I think we had this conversation yesterday. I know how the liberation tax team, where they keep the money. I don't know. Yesterday, the other day, the finance chief told me that I should understand the department has quasi independence. And I smiled because that's his charter right. The liberation tax chair lady yesterday sent a letter which is very clear on how she wants the funds to be moved. I can assure Ambazonians, and I think all of us are conscious about it, that whatever commitment they make will be used in furtherance of the ends for which he was asked. As far as myself I'm concerned, there is never a day that an Ambazonian dime has ended up.
In your
I
pockets.
remember the other day when I was flying to Germany, and I was looking at myself as president of AGOVC, you know, and sometimes I travel, and it's a tough ride. I spent the night with the finance secretary just to be able to catch a flight 6 o'clock in the morning. It was not AGOVC that paid my flight. It's from my own pocket, to all the difficult journeys. So I understand the importance of transparency. I understand the importance of accountability. That is part of the reason why we fight. And any leader who is going to mismanage the resources of the people is not worth to be called a leader. It's not even worth to be part of a liberation struggle. That is a key indicator on the conduct of any leader. So the funds you are raising, the funds you are putting, is managed properly. The forces are part of the management. The political leadership is part of the management. There is independence in the way that it is managed, and we trace and track in a way that it is very, very transparent.
Okay. Thank you very much for that succinct answer, Mr. President. It was very important for me to bring that up. I could have answered that. I promise you, not the way you answered it. I would have just hit it on the head and moved. So, but that is who you are, and we admire your calmness in the way you handle most of these things. And so, Mr. President, in terms of liberation tax, just give me a second then, and I will take this back to where I am. Perfect. The liberation tax has been in existence, say, 8 months and above, and yet Amazonians are not seeing any drastic change on the resistance on the ground as they would have hoped. When the people, when we talk about the liberation tax, they felt like it's going to be like now we'll do this thing. One would have expected a capture of like the entire La Republique military base, or maybe something and chase them out of Ambazonia. So what is the delay, or Ambazonians not paying their tax as you hope they should? Or what is actually holding some fire on the ground?
Nothing in terms of relations with the liberation tax. We have a clear-cut plan on how we are going to invest the liberation tax. My promise when this thing was launched was that we should invest the liberation tax in the liberation rather than the resistance. The resistance is ongoing. There is fighting across the territory. There are blockade of highways. That's part of the resistance. We should move into liberation, where we are able to do what you have just spoken about, overrun these bases, and to be able to inflict heavy casualties on the enemy. That is not only an issue of money, it's an issue of logistics. And we are doing our utmost best. And people should be patient. They are going to see the result.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambazonians. You've heard it from the horse's own mouth. So let's be patient. The resistance continue, but we will win the war. So, Mr. President, for every defaulter of every law, there is always a consequence. So we know we've made the liberation tax in a way that it has to be the people voluntarily or, sponsoring the war by themselves, being part of the process. But then this is a law. So what happens to defaulters of this law, especially Ambazonians and even foreign nationals living within Ambazonia, operating businesses and other stuffs in the territory?
The law in its spirit and in its substance is very clear. The addendum of the law spells out very clearly on what happens to those who delay in paying within a particular period of time. It increases in terms of percentage. But also at the level of implementation, we've asked our forces to be understanding. Because though you might craft certain laws, in its implementation, they are adapted to the domestic realities of the areas. And in certain areas, we have made it absolutely clear. And you saw in one of the videos where they asked the mother if she's paid her tax. And she said she wasn't prepared. And they just told her, go home and make sure that you meet the forces around that particular area and pay your tax. I know there have been some complaints about harsh methods of implementation. We've cautioned our forces to make sure they educate and make people be convinced. We have implemented even partial payment to make sure that people who don't have the amount immediately are able to pay partially. We've taken steps to make sure that people understand it and people voluntarily pay. So there is neither in terms of enforcement impunity or any other kind of covert activities that is undertaken to make sure that people are going to pay their tax. But we are very strict that the law is the law and every Amazonian has to pay the tax. Those in the diaspora have to pay their tax. We are happy that Amazonians in the diaspora who sometimes want to travel, they call and pay their tax. We are encouraged by that and they should continue to do so.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. But there's this one, not one, but just many stories that have been coming up from ground zero, how most of our mothers who are traveling from one part of Ambazonia to another carry their liberation tax receipt. And when they were stopped by La Republic at checkpoints to ask for their ID card, they produced their Ambazonian liberation tax receipt. And it was just a wow to hear something like that. So following this kind of stories, because it just makes you feel that spirit of Ambazonia, because the military man, from what I heard, said, no, I don't mean this Ambazonia one, I mean La Republic one. So this is telling you that these are two distinct nations.
It's not only that. It's not only that. We got a story which is not related to liberation tax when I don't know, something happened somewhere and I think somebody took a matter to a certain colonial police office, and the officer asked where that infraction had taken place, and the lady explained where it had taken place, and the policeman said that area is Amber area, so you go and consult. Go and consult the administration of Amba.
Oh my God. And so, Mr. President, with these stories, I just want you to give a message to our mothers and to our fathers, following the example of this woman, the beauty of holding something that truly belongs to you and that you are truly a part of it. So they understand how important this liberation tax is to the liberation of
This
Ambazonia.
is this is the first thing. Our people have been used to paying taxes, they've never been issued receipts. There's never been evidence. Our people have been used to giving bribe, no receipt has ever been issued. And then suddenly they pay a tax and they are issued a very beautiful receipt. You have your online receipt or liberation tax. It's like you should place it like the pin that you have on your chest. It's a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of ownership. People love it. People feel it. And people see a change. It's it's because of the brutality of the enemy and the intoxication that sometimes the fear mongering compatriots of ours are injecting. People love the idea of the tax and they wish they could give more. People are paying for children that are not supposed to be paid for. People are paying for 2 years. People are paying for 3 years. Somebody came and they said the tax is 10,000. The person paid 100 and said it's only for this year.
That's right.
This, yes, this is how people have embraced this idea, despite the opposition. The enemy themselves, as you related in that story, they themselves are telling people, that you pay your tax to Amber if you are entering that area. And I am so humbled, and I still ask those who are still behind on this to realize, as you said at the beginning of this particular topic, that it's a game changer for every one of us, for our struggle, and all the forces that carry arms in the defense of our homeland. If we meet our target, they are going to benefit from this.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would just like to talk more on one story of this liberation tax before we move forward, because I also heard this story from the ground. One of my younger ones called and was talking about the post you made the last time about before these vandals came, we had all of these things. We had the airport, we have all of these in our keeping before they came and destroyed it. So that post motivated a lot of people who didn't truly understand that we had these things in Ambazonia. And now we don't even, people hear it, or maybe they studied it in history and they don't know that this actually existed. But they see the future of Ambazonia with the liberation tax, that if we can truly pay our liberation tax and Ambazonia is liberated, then all of these facilities, all of these amenities will be returned to Ambazonia, and we will live a liberated people and will flourish the way we're supposed to flourish. So I just wanted to bring that up to your attention, that this is what people are saying. And it's important that these things, we keep bringing them up to people to remind them, because everybody has forgotten what Ambazonia was like before 1961. Or most people have forgotten about it. But when you start bringing back those memories, it opens their mind. It tells them that truly this man knows what he's doing, and he is here for the people of Ambazonia. So, Mr. President, thank you for that. And please, we didn't learn those things in school, in history. No, we didn't. We only
Because the enemy rewrote the history. One of the
right.
first aspects of colonialism is to alter your history. And they made us, I mean, you could not even call your own name. You were ashamed of your name. You never believed we had international airports, the deepest seaport in the West Africa. When I was doing the rounds on states, the potentials of the states, I mean, Ambazonia is going to be uniquely different. They are not only scared of losing us, they are scared of what we are going to produce after they are gone. That is what keeps them awake at night, because the difference between Ambazonia and La Republique will be day and night. They know our ingenuity. They know about our creativity. endurance, and they know, most importantly, about our adherence to laws and how we can transform our society. These vandals are the worst to ever set foot around Ambazonia. And for anyone who is playing romance with them, you are dealing with a viper. These guys need to be cut from the head.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just got a message from the studio that there is a breaking and they would like to, just try to reboot it and do something. So, viewers, please bear with us. We'll be back in the next 2 minutes just to reset some things in the studio, and it will enable the president to also take a sip of water. Thank you very much, and see you back in the next 2 minutes.
All right.
I know if you get black and never my money close. Even a one cup tea we get for toast. Some more time then go candy get we get your shows. I know be able to guarantee good future for my